All right, today the movie is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, released on December 6th, 1964. Welcome to Brandon at Random Reviews, covering one unsystematically chosen movie at a time. Directed by Larry Romer. For the voice cast, we have Burl Ives, who plays Sam the Snowman, and he's our narrator for the film. Then we have Larry Mann, who plays Yukon Cornelius, the greatest prospector in the North. Billie Mae Richards, who spells it Billie. She's a woman. And she was credited as Billie Billy Richards because they didn't want people to know that Rudolph was voiced by a woman. Then you have Paul Soles as Hermie, Stan Francis as Santa Claus, and Janice Orenstein as Clarice. For a plot synopsis, a young reindeer is mocked for his non-conforming light-up nose until he grows up and has it exploited in the name of mass materialism. Alright, let's dive right into this fucking plot. At the beginning, we get this little collection of doom and gloom newspaper headlines juxtaposed against a blizzard. Sam the Snowman starts telling us who he is and where he is, which is the North Pole. He has this moment where he's telling us where Santa and Mrs. Claus live, and he says that it's the last castle on the left, and he says, as a matter of fact, it's the only castle on the left, and he lets out this little hearty chuckle, and I always let out an obnoxious, sarcastic laugh. It's too much. So anyway, Mrs. Claus is trying to fatten Santa up in time for Christmas, and I gotta be honest, Santa's weight is probably the least of his problems, as we find out later. A more major concern with him is just him being a giant fucking asshole. And just so we're clear, Sam the Snowman, he has the right to break the fourth wall as the narrator, but the whole acting like someone is actually saying something to him is a bit much. We don't hear anybody's voices talking back to him, but he's like, "What? Rudolph? You never heard the story of Rudolph?" And it's like, no, just keep fucking going. So Sam breaks into the title song, and then it goes instrumental only as we get the opening credits with a medley of the different songs to be featured in the film. Sam tells of when Rudolph was born to his father Donner and his mother Mrs. Donner, because apparently the writers of this movie were completely out of name ideas and couldn't just call her Linda or some shit. So the two new parents quickly realize that Rudolph has a shiny red nose that lights up and beeps and whistles and all sorts of weird shit. The noises are not in the original Rudolph song, but they add tension to the story later, so I guess it's okay. So Santa shows up to greet the newborn and notices Rudolph's nonconformity as well. Donner assures Santa that Rudolph will grow out of it, but to be clear, Donner is not a fucking doctor, and as far as I know, Rudolph's would be the first illuminating nose case on record. So Santa suggests that if Rudolph doesn't grow out of the nose, that will mean that Rudolph might not actually be able to be on his team someday, because the North Pole is all about inclusion, guys. And honestly, if I were Rudolph in this situation, I'd be like, yeah, fuck you, buddy. You know what? I'll remember this interaction when the time comes. So Santa breaks out into the Jingle Jangle Jingle song. The songs in this movie are actually pretty fucking solid, I can't lie. So Donner decides that they'll hide Rudolph's nose under some clay or mud or whatever, and he just says that he'll get used to it. And Rudolph says, "It's not very comfortable." And it's like, yeah, I bet it's fucking not, Rudolph. You've got mud on your nose. So Donner says that there are things that are more important than comfort, like self-respect, and Donner just really seems like he'd be a great guy to hang out with, you know, a lot of fun. So Donner shows Rudolph how to be a reindeer, especially how to avoid the abominable snow monster. And it seems realistically like all of the folks in Christmas Town should just overwhelm the Abominable with sheer numbers and kill him and be done with it, but they're just not doing that. So anyway, we get a glimpse of elf life and toy making, and we meet this one elf, Hermie, and we know he's important because he has real looking eyes. Like, you can see the white of his eyes with black circles in the middle, but all of the other elves, for the most part, just have like single black dots for eyes. So that's just a neat little thing. So Hermie is just not happy in his work. He doesn't really like to make toys at all. So Hermie's boss, the head elf, chastises Hermie, and the other elves chime in, and Hermie says that he'd rather be a dentist. Hermie is forced to work through break or risk being fired because they're not unionized at the North Pole yet, I guess. And the other elves have completely cast Hermie out because of his feelings on his career. And I will say that there is a lot of gay allegory in Hermie's story. I mean, if he's a gay elf, he's a gay elf. That's not a big deal. Just be true to who you are. But to be fair, I haven't really sensed a real culture of acceptance at the North Pole, so it might kind of be a big deal that he's gay. So Donner is continuing to hide Rudolph's nose as he gears up to play in the Reindeer games. Rudolph meets another fawn named Fireball, and they become fast friends, and Fireball explains that the games are a great place to score some chicks, and the elves have what they call elf practice, which is basically just the head elf doing a fake voice and having them sing a song for the clauses, basically. To clarify what I mean by that, the elf talks like really mean and angry all the time, and then all of a sudden it's like Santa's around. He's like, "Oh, well, hello, Santa, how are you doing today?" It's like, okay, yeah, that's one way to go. Hermie is confronted for missing elf practice by the head elf guy because apparently Hermie contributes positively to the singing, at least, so that's good. Hermie's been fixing doll teeth while elf practice was happening, and the head elf just shoots him down and tells him that he'll never fit in because he really thought to himself, if I can integrate these two things of like making toys and being a dentist, that would be my ticket. So Hermie decides, after taking as much as he can stand, he goes AWOL. He leaves his elving duties by escaping out of a window in the workshop. And then back at the Reindeer games, Fireball points out that one of the does seems to like Rudolph, and he is just so fucking geeked about it. Coach Comet organizes some flying lessons, and he has an awesome voice, by the way. And he's like, right. We won't be letting Rudolph play in any reindeer games. Right. It's ridiculous. So everyone fights to try the first flight. The first fawn really fucking sucks at it, but it was a good effort. And Fireball coaxes Rudolph to go meet the doe who was checking him out while he awaits his turn. Clarice is her name, and bless her heart, she is just trying to talk to Rudolph, but this fucking dope just keeps giving these very brief responses. Like, she'll ask Rudolph something, and he'll just say, yup, no follow-up question, no nothing. And it's like, my God, dude, you gotta do more than that. So that's pretty much my experience with online dating, but I would be in Clarice's shoes. That's the experience I have. They introduce themselves to each other, and Rudolph asks Clarice if she wants to walk home with him, and she says yes and tells him that she thinks he's cute. And Rudolph is immediately summoned by Comet to come take his turn in the flying lessons, and Rudolph is so fucking over the moon about Clarice, he just says, I'm cued, over and over because he's got the fake nose on, so that's how he's talking. Rudolph is basically just so horny that it allows him to fly all over the place like a champ. It's pretty fucking amazing. And then when he lands and he begins telling Fireball about what happened, they knock antlers together just playing around, and Rudolph's fake nose falls off. So Fireball is freaked out at the sight of the red nose, and so is Comet and the rest of the reindeer as they begin calling Rudolph names. And there are very few adults in this movie. And I mean, there are characters of an adult age, but they're mostly pieces of shit. They're not very adult acting at all. So Santa tells Donner that he ought to be ashamed of himself, even though Donner's behavior was at least partially motivated by Santa, because Santa is the one who told Donner that if Rudolph didn't grow out of the nose, that he'd never be on the reindeer team. So, you know, fuck Santa Claus in this fucking movie, honestly. Comet tells Rudolph that he won't be playing in any more reindeer games, and I just gotta say, what a great guy. Class act, honestly. So as Rudolph walks away, Clarice stops him to comfort him, and she tells him she likes his real nose better than the fake one. And at that point, I really don't think that Rudolph would be able to tell the difference between romantic attraction and being overjoyed that someone is just being decent to him. So Clarice sings a little song, which is decent, but it's probably the weakest of the film. And Clarice's father shows up and breaks the two of them up and warns that he doesn't want Clarice to be seen with a red-nosed reindeer. Rudolph's super fucking bummed out, obviously, and he sits on a snowbank where Hermie pops up, and they become friends over their mutual decision to become independent. They decide to be independent together, and they keep using that word. I do not think it means what they think it means. They agree to accept each other for who they are, and the gay allegories are as strong as ever. The two misfits go off on their own, and they have to dodge the abominable snow monster out in the wild. They meet Yukon Cornelius, who is a prospector that is looking for silver and gold, we're to understand. Sam the Snowman performs this nice silver and gold song that's just kind of a soothing little melody. And Yukon offers to give Rudolph and Hermie a ride on his dog sled, and I've got to applaud Yukon since he is completely unfazed by these two who are completely different. They have totally different lifestyles and appearances from him, and he doesn't even really acknowledge it at all. So Yukon struggles a great deal with getting his dogs going on the dog sled, and then we find out that Yukon calls the abominable snow monster a bumble, and that's what I'll be calling the abominable snow monster for the remainder of this movie. Rudolph is developing a guilt complex as he realizes that his nose seems to be the cause of their run-ins with the bumble, and I can't help but wonder if maybe putting a little bit of mud on his nose would resolve that issue, but that's neither here nor there. They run from the bumble and they come to a body of water where Yukon chips off a chunk of ice for them to use as a raft, and we find out one of many bumble facts from Yukon, which is that bumbles sink, so the bumble cannot pursue them across the water. Yukon keeps throwing his pickaxe up in the air, and when it lands, he picks it up and he licks it. And I guess he's tasting it for whether there's silver or gold on it. I mean, I don't know. I have absolutely no idea what silver or gold tastes like. So back with the Donner Party. So I don't know how much you know about history, but there was a famous band of cannibals from the Old West named the Donner Party, and they ate each other. So that's just a fun little tidbit, and I decided to call the Donners the Donner Parties. They feel pretty bad, and they realize that they should go and look for Rudolph. Donner says that it's man's work and that Mrs. Donner should stay home while he looks because, yeah, I mean, going around and looking for someone is exclusive to one gender only, you ass face. So shortly after Donner leaves, Clarice comes, and her and Mrs. Donner go out looking for Rudolph as well. Yukon and the boys are in a dense fog, and Yukon says, "Fog is thick as peanut butter." And Hermie's like, "You mean pea soup?" And he says, "You eat what you like, and I'll eat what I like." And it's like, that's fucking great, Yukon. I hope that voice is okay. I hope it's not terrible. I'm trying my best here. Hermie seems like he's just not a fan of Yukon. There's this moment where they crash into land on this ice raft, and after they've already hit, Yukon yells out, "Land ho!" Hermie is just so annoyed, he's just like, no kidding. He just fucking shuts him down. Anyway, Rudolph, Hermie, and Yukon run into a talking toy, and he's a jack-in-the-box. He's also the sentry of the Island of Misfit Toys. He's a misfit because his name is actually Charlie. So we meet a handful of other toys, and I'm sorry if you already got a preview of this, but among the misfit toys are a polka-dotted or spotted elephant, and that's honestly just a cool fucking design idea by the stuffed animal manufacturer. That's not a problem at all. Then we have the cowboy that rides the fucking ostrich. Are you shitting me? That is so much fucking cooler than any cowboy riding a horse. So then there's the bird that can't fly and only swims. And honestly, if you're a child, you still have to pretend that any other bird toy is flying. So why not just pretend that bird can fly? Plus it's waterproof and you can take it swimming presumably, so that's solid. There's a train with square wheels on his caboose, and honestly, that just seems like a hardware upgrade. I'm not really sure why they're even manufacturing square wheels. Just swap them out for round ones and you should be good. Then there's a water pistol that shoots jelly, and that legitimately just means that it's a more powerful water pistol. It can shoot that thick-ass jelly out. Are you shitting me? That's so much better. And the Charlie in the box that is just a Jack-in-the-Box named Charlie, but there's nothing inherently wrong with its functionality as a toy. Either just go by Jack or keep your name Charlie and make that your cool, unique thing that makes you stand out. Then there's this doll that is suffering from depression and low self-esteem. I hate to break it to you, honey, but we all suffer from depression and low self-esteem, and I think that just makes us all misfits. We all can say that we have things wrong with us, but as long as we have the right outlook, we can survive and thrive in these times. But there is that one boat that they come across that won't stay afloat. If that can't be repaired or fixed in some way, then I guess they'll probably just take it out back and shoot it. So anyway, they're singing their little Island of Misfit Toys song, and the jelly pistol squirts jelly on Hermie's face, and Rudolph starts licking it off, and it's like, okay. All right, so the trio decides that maybe since they're also misfits, that they'll go see King Moonracer to see if they can stay there, and King Moonracer is basically the lord of the Island of Misfit Toys. So King Moonracer explains that the island is only for toys, but the boys can stay the night in exchange for them passing the word along about the island to Santa. So King Moonracer says a toy can never truly be happy until it is loved by a child. And it's important to note that King Moonracer is not a toy, but he lives on this island, and I guess it's okay for him because he's the king? I don't know. So that night, Rudolph argues with Yukon and Hermie that he must go off alone because, he's putting them all in danger, which is 100% true. It's absolutely right. But they tell him no, and that they're in this together, solidarity, bro, blah, blah, blah. But Rudolph knows that he must go to prevent more run-ins with the Bumble, so he sneaks out in the night like some unruly high schooler. And Rudolph grows up fast, which makes him realize that he can't run from his troubles somehow. I don't really understand how he has this revelation, and just growing up makes him realize that, but okay. When he comes back, the reindeer are still dicks to him about his nose, and he can't find his parents, and Santa explains that they all went off to find him. And we don't really have a good sense of, the passage of time in this movie. We don't know how many days it's been. So it's it would appear that the Donners and Clarice went off looking for Rudolph quite a while ago, but we don't know. We don't know how long it was. So anyway, Santa is worried about not being able to get his sleigh off the ground without Donner because Santa only cares about those who are useful to him in some way. He's not concerned in the least that Donner might be in some kind of danger or hurt or something. It's not a concern of his. It's just his reindeer team. He's got to be able to fly his sleigh. As Rudolph goes to find everyone, a bad blizzard hits, and you see these little houses getting torn apart and stuff, but the rest of the movie, you don't really see much evidence of a real blizzard going on. I'm assuming it would have been too hard to animate. It's basically just not as bad in these other scenes following this. Rudolph finds his folks and Clarice in the Bumble's cave, and the Bumble gets the best of Rudolph, and it's left to Yukon and Hermie to save them. They devise a plan, and it's a fucking golden plan, honestly. So here's the deal. One thing you need to know is that Bumbles apparently are known to prefer pork to venison, all right? That's critical. The idea is that Hermie will be out oinking out of sight outside of the cave to lure the Bumble out, and then Yukon will pry loose a boulder when the Bumble comes out to investigate the oinks and hit the Bumble in the head with the boulder and knock it out. All right, so this boulder is above the opening of the cave, and that's where this is all going to happen. It's a brilliant plan, and it works hook, line, and sinker. The Bumble is KO'd, and the deer are saved. The Bumble wakes up, and Hermie has actually removed all of his teeth, which is pretty fucking fast work, if you ask me. Yukon antagonizes the Bumble a little bit and coerces him into falling off of a cliff, but Yukon falls with him and is presumed dead. I mean, we look around at the bottom of the cliff and we see absolutely nothing. We don't see bodies laying on the ground way down there. We don't see anything. So you really don't know what to think. The group returns to Christmas Town, and everyone makes amends with each other, and Santa promises to find homes for the misfit toys. And Donner says that he's sorry to Rudolph for the way he acted, which, yeah, you're going to need a few years of therapy to get through all of these feelings. One little sorry is not going to do it, Donner. You're an asshole. We get a knock on the door of the castle, and it's Yukon with the Bumble, which means we got our 30 seconds of grief for fucking nothing. And the Bumble's one useful talent that we find is that he can put the star on the Christmas tree. Isn't that nice? Even though it kind of seems like they probably used a ladder for that before, and it probably worked fine, and they didn't have to have a giant monster walking around in a castle. But what can you do? Everyone's working hard and getting ready for Christmas, and the weather report comes in, and the blizzard is so bad that Santa decides he has to cancel Christmas. And I don't really understand this. Is this blizzard literally enveloping the entire fucking world? So when Santa goes out to tell everyone the news, Rudolph's nose is shining in his face so fucking hard that he realizes that he could have Rudolph lead the team and they'd be able to see through the storm. So Donner says this line. He says, "I knew that nose would be useful someday. I knew it all along." And it's like, yeah, Donner, what if it never proved useful? Would he just never deserve your love, you big sack of shit? Burl Ives sings Holly Jolly Christmas as everyone makes final preparations, and I absolutely love that song. At the end of the movie, we see Yukon strike Peppermint near the castle, and he's overjoyed. That's kind of the closure to his story. And Santa makes a point of stopping to get the misfit toys just as they've given up hope. And you see at the end, they're flying in Santa's sleigh, and they're taking these misfit toys and they're giving them umbrellas and letting them glide down to earth with the umbrella as like their parachute. And I'm like, that's not how Santa's delivering toys. What the fuck are you talking about? Never in any iteration have I ever heard of that. So anyway, that's the end of the story, and for highlights, I'll say the songs are probably the best part. I mean, the ridiculous story is great. I really love it, especially the whole plot to defeat the Bumble. There are a lot of great characters, even if some of them are complete asshole pieces of shit. For criticism, I would say there's probably nothing wrong with this movie other than give Mrs. Donner a real name and give the head elf a real name. How hard can it fucking be? Just establish their names as you would in any other story. We've got some production notes and trivia for this one. When Yukon Cornelius throws his pickaxe into the ground and takes it out and licks it, he's checking neither for gold nor silver. The original concept for the special stated that Yukon was in fact searching for the elusive peppermint mine, which he eventually finds at the end of the movie. That scene has since been restored, starting with the 1998 home video VHS release. So yeah, the VHS that I had when I was a kid did not have the part where he finds the peppermint mine, and there were like a couple of alternate songs and things like that. So Yukon Cornelius's stalwart sled dogs include a Cocker Spaniel, a Poodle, a Saint Bernard, a Collie, and a Dachshund. A little joke for you. I went to a zoo once. It was terrible. There was only one animal in the whole place. It was a dog. It was a shit zoo. There you go. That's what you get. That's my fucking joke. The title character and original story was created by Robert L. May as an assignment for Montgomery Ward. A song was then developed by Johnny Marks and then popularized through a Gene Autry version. Due to the Roman numeral error in the copyright notice, it reads 1164 rather than 1964. The original elements of this film are considered public domain. The songs and the story the film is based on are independently copyrighted, though. Aside from Burl Ives, all of the characters are portrayed by Canadian actors. Apparently, Burl Ives was actually the only one to get royalties in this film's cast, and everyone else was also presumably paid a lot less than him, just as a base salary. That's pretty fucking shitty. All right, on to ratings. IMDb's 8.1. Rotten Tomato critics score, 95%. Rotten Tomato audience score, 76%. Personal rating, 5 out of 5 stars. I still watch this one every fucking year and I never get tired of it. It's so great. Absolutely. Check it out if you've never seen it. All right, everyone. Thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day. Bye now.